Hello everyone. I hope you enjoy listening to the story. I denied my own parents' life-saving insurance claim while they begged me on their knees not knowing. I was the daughter they abandoned in the ICU 18 years ago. My name is Sophia Bennett, and I am 28 years old. The file sits open in front of me, stamped urgent in red. The kind that usually makes my colleagues rush, panic, approve without thinking. $480,000 for intensive care, multiple surgeries, long-term rehabilitation. I have seen numbers like this before. I have signed approvals that saved strangers. I have denied claims that ruined lives. That is my job. But today, my fingers freeze above the keyboard because of two names printed neatly at the top of the page. My chest tightens in a way I have not felt in years, not since the night that rewrote my entire life. I lean back slowly, forcing myself to breathe, but the air feels heavy, thick, like the stale hospital oxygen that used to hiss beside my bed. I was 8 years old when the accident happened. I remember the sound first, metal folding into itself, glass exploding like rain, my mother screaming my name, and then silence. When I woke up, everything hurt. Tubes filled my mouth, machines blinked around me, and strangers spoke in hushed, urgent voices. I could not move. I could barely think. But I could hear. That was the worst part. I heard the doctor explaining the cost, explaining the procedures, explaining the chances. I heard my mother ask if there was a cheaper option. I heard my father say nothing at all. That silence still echoes louder than any scream. They thought I was asleep when they made the decision. They thought I would never remember. But I remember every word. They said the treatment was too expensive. They said they still had another child to raise. They said it did not make sense to spend everything on a girl who might not even survive. Let that sink in. I was lying there, broken, bleeding inside. And they were calculating my worth like a failed investment. Then came the sound of paper sliding across a table, a pen clicking, signatures sealing my fate. They walked out of that hospital room and never came back. I woke up later that night to a quiet so complete it felt unreal. No voices. No footsteps. Just the steady beep of a machine reminding me I was still alive. A nurse told me gently that my parents had signed the discharge against medical advice. She said it like it was normal, like people did this every day. Maybe they do. But to me, it felt like the world had ended and no one bothered to tell me. I stared at the empty doorway, waiting, hoping they would come back. They never did. I do not die that night. A doctor I barely remember decides to keep treating me despite the paperwork, bending rules that were never meant to protect children like me. I survive, but survival does not feel like a victory. It feels like waking up in a life where I no longer belong to anyone. When I am discharged weeks later, there is no family waiting, no flowers, no relief. Just a caseworker with a clipboard and tired eyes who avoids looking at my scars for too long. That is how my second life begins, not with hope, but with absence. The system raises me, if you can call it that. Foster homes blur together like a series of temporary shelters where nothing is truly mine. Some families are kind but distant, some are careless, some see me as a monthly check. I learn early to pack light, to not get attached, to leave quietly when it is time. The label follows me everywhere, the girl with medical history, the one who costs more, the one you think twice about keeping. I hear it in whispers behind closed doors, in conversations that stop when I enter the room. I start to understand something simple and brutal. People calculate value, even when they pretend they do not. School becomes my only stable ground. Numbers make sense when people do not. Rules feel safer than emotions. I bury myself in textbooks because they do not abandon me halfway through a sentence. Teachers call me focused, driven, unusually calm for someone my age. They do not see the reason behind it. I am not calm. I am controlled. There is a difference. Every time I close my eyes, I still hear that question from the hospital room asking if there is a cheaper option. I replay it until it stops sounding like a question and starts sounding like a lesson. If the world runs on decisions like that, then I need to understand how those decisions are made. By the time I reach high school, I already know what I want. Not a dream job, not a passion. Control. I want to be the person who decides what something is worth. I take advanced classes, volunteer at legal aid clinics, spend weekends reading about insurance policies and medical billing codes while other kids go to parties. It sounds obsessive because it is. Every detail matters. Every clause, every loophole, every line that determines whether someone gets help or gets denied. I do not chase success for pride. I chase it because I refuse to ever be powerless again. College becomes my escape and my weapon at the same time. I earn scholarships, work late shifts, live on cheap food and caffeine, and graduate at the top of my class in insurance law and medical auditing. Professors recommend me for positions at major firms, impressed by my precision and my ability to dissect complex cases without hesitation. They call it professionalism. They call it discipline. What they do not realize is that I learned all of this from a hospital bed where my life was reduced to a financial decision. My first job places me in a large healthcare insurance corporation where everything is systematized, categorized, and measured. Lives become files. Emergencies become numbers. People become cases that move through a pipeline of approval or denial. At first, it unsettles me. Then it starts to feel familiar. This is the machine that judged me before I even understood what was happening. Now I am inside it. Now I understand it. I rise quickly. I learn how to identify fraudulent claims, how to read financial histories, how to trace hidden assets. I learn that the system is not just about helping or denying. It is about risk, patterns, probability. It is about who is considered worth the cost. I become good at it, too good according to some colleagues who joke that I never hesitate. They are wrong. I hesitate all the time. I just do not show it anymore. One night, years into my career, I request access to archived records for a training project. It is routine, nothing personal at first, but curiosity pulls me further than necessary. I search for my own case, the one that started everything. It takes time, but eventually I find it. The scanned documents appear on my screen, slightly faded but still clear enough to read. I scroll slowly, expecting pain, expecting anger, expecting something dramatic. Instead, what I feel is something colder. My parents had insurance. Not perfect coverage, but enough to make a difference. Enough to keep me alive without destroying them financially. There were options, payment plans, support programs they could have applied for. They chose not to. They signed the refusal, knowing there were alternatives. Knowing there was a chance. They just decided I was not worth the effort. That realization changes everything. It removes the last piece of doubt I had been carrying all these years. It was not desperation. It was not ignorance. It was a decision, a calculated one. From that moment on, something inside me settles into place. I stop asking why. I stop wondering if there was a misunderstanding. I focus on what matters. Understanding the system is not enough. I need to master it. I need to know exactly how decisions like that are made so that one day, if the moment comes, I will not hesitate. And now, sitting in this quiet office with their names staring back at me from the screen, I realize that moment has arrived. The roles have reversed in a way that feels almost unreal. They are no longer the ones deciding. They're the ones waiting. The ones hoping someone behind a desk will choose to save them. I thought denying them would be easy. I thought it would feel like justice, clean and simple. But as I continue reading through their file, reviewing their financial history, their recent transactions, their attempts to shift assets and manipulate coverage, I realize something unexpected. They have not changed. They are still making decisions based on what benefits them the most. Still trying to outsmart the system. Still treating survival like a negotiation. And that is when I understand that this is not just about the past anymore. This is about what I choose to do now. They sit across from me in a small consultation room that smells faintly of antiseptic and stale coffee. The kind of place where people come when they have run out of options. My parents look older than I imagined, smaller somehow. Like life has been slowly pressing them down for years. My mother's hands shake as she clutches a folder filled with medical bills. While my father keeps glancing at the door like he is hoping someone else will walk in and save him from this conversation. Neither of them recognizes me. Not my face, not my voice. Not the quiet way I study them like a case instead of a family. To them, I am just another insurance officer, another gatekeeper standing between them and survival. They start talking before I even ask a question. The words spill out fast, desperate, unfiltered. They explain the accident, the emergency surgery, the mounting costs. They talk about how unfair the system is, how no one should be left to die because of money. My mother's voice cracks at the right moments, her eyes glossy with practiced fear. My father tries to sound rational, emphasizing their willingness to cooperate, to provide any documentation needed. I listen without interrupting, my pen moving slowly across the file, noting details I already know. Their story is polished, almost convincing. But I have seen too many cases to miss the inconsistencies. Hidden accounts, recent transfers, attempts to reduce reported assets just weeks before the claim was filed. They are not just victims. They are players trying to tilt the board in their favor. I ask a few measured questions, keeping my tone neutral. Dates, income sources, property records. Each answer reveals more than they intend. My father hesitates at certain points, my mother fills in gaps too quickly. They think they are being careful, but desperation makes people sloppy. I let silence stretch after each response, watching how they react to the pressure. It is almost clinical the way I observe them. 18 years ago, they sat in a hospital room deciding whether I was worth saving. Now I sit across from them, deciding how much truth they deserve. At one point, my mother leans forward, her voice dropping to a whisper like she is sharing something sacred. She says no one deserves to be abandoned in a hospital, not when their life is hanging by a thread. The sentence lands between us like a loaded weapon. For a second, I feel something crack beneath the surface. A sharp flash of memory that threatens to pull me back into that cold, silent room. I almost laugh, not out of humor, but because the irony is so precise it feels scripted. She has no idea what she is saying, no idea who she is saying it to. I keep my expression steady, but inside something shifts. I close the file gently and rest my hands on the table. My voice is calm when I speak again, almost detached. I tell them their case requires further review due to discrepancies in their financial disclosures. I explain the process, the potential consequences, the need for additional documentation. My father's face tightens, and my mother's composure begins to crack. They did not expect resistance. They expected sympathy, maybe even a quick approval if they played their roles well enough. Instead, they are facing a wall they cannot charm or pressure into moving. Days pass as I build the case. I go through every transaction, every record, every detail they tried to hide. The pattern becomes clear. Asset transfers to relatives, undeclared income streams, strategic timing designed to make them appear less capable than they actually are. It is not just a questionable claim. It is deliberate manipulation. I compile everything with precision, documenting each inconsistency, each violation of policy. This is where my training takes over completely. No hesitation, no emotion, just facts. When I call them back in, the room feels different. Heavier. They sense it too. My father sits straighter, trying to regain control, while my mother avoids my eyes. I place the file on the table and slide it toward them. For a moment, neither of them touches it. I let the silence do its work. Then I begin to speak, outlining the findings in clear, measured terms. Fraud indicators, policy violations, grounds for denial. Each word lands with deliberate weight. My mother starts to cry halfway through, soft at first, then louder, as if volume might change the outcome. My father interrupts, arguing, deflecting, trying to reframe the situation. I let him talk until he runs out of excuses. Then I say the words I have been holding back. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to cut through everything else. I tell them I remember the hospital. I describe the room, the machines, the conversation they thought I could not hear. Their reactions are immediate and raw. Confusion first, then recognition creeping in like a slow realization they cannot stop. My mother's crying stops abruptly, replaced by a stunned silence. My father stares at me, searching my face for something familiar, something he should have noticed sooner. I lean forward slightly, meeting their eyes for the first time not as an officer, but as the child they left behind. I tell them who I am. The words feel simple, almost too small for the weight they carry. I am the daughter they abandoned in that ICU. The air in the room shifts instantly. It is like watching a structure collapse in slow motion. My mother's hands fly to her mouth, her body folding in on itself as the truth settles in. My father's posture breaks, his confidence draining away, replaced by something closer to fear. They start talking over each other, apologies tangled with excuses, explanations that sound hollow even as they say them. They claim they were scared, that they did not understand, that they thought it was the only option. I listen without reacting. I have imagined this moment before, but the reality is quieter than I expected. There is no satisfaction in their regret, no sense of victory in their panic, just a strange clarity. When they finally stop, I give them my decision. The claim is denied based on verified fraud and policy violations. The case will be forwarded for financial investigation. I explain it the same way I would to any client, with precision and finality. No anger, no raised voice, just the execution of a process. My mother collapses into tears again, reaching toward me as if I might change my mind. My father does not speak. He just stares as if trying to understand how the balance shifted so completely. I stand up, signaling the end of the meeting. As I walk to the door, I pause for a brief second, not to reconsider, but to acknowledge the moment for what it is. 18 years ago, they made a decision about my life. Today, I made one about theirs. I do not add anything else. I do not soften it. I simply leave. But walking away from that room does not feel like victory. I walk out of that room expecting to feel something sharp, something clean, something that would finally settle the weight I have been carrying for 18 years. Instead, what I feel is quiet. Not peace, not relief. Just a strange stillness that follows me down the hallway and into the elevator. The doors close, and for a moment I catch my reflection in the mirrored wall. I look composed, controlled, exactly like the professional everyone believes me to be. But behind that, there is something else I cannot quite name. It is not guilt. It is not regret. It is something closer to awareness. I return to my office and sit down in front of the same file, now marked denied. The system processes it automatically, moving it into the next phase, flagging it for investigation. It is efficient, precise, indifferent, just like it was when I was 8 years old. I stare at the screen longer than necessary, reading the same lines again, even though nothing has changed. Fraud confirmed. Claim rejected. Case escalated. The words are simple, but they carry consequences that will ripple through the rest of their lives. My phone rings once, then stops. A message notification follows almost immediately. I do not need to open it to know who it is. They found a way to get my number, or maybe they asked someone, begged someone. Desperation always finds a path. I let the phone sit there, vibrating softly against the desk, before finally picking it up. The message is short, uneven, typed too quickly. My mother. She says she is sorry. She says she did not know what she was doing back then. She says they will lose everything without help. She asks if I can reconsider, just this once, just enough to give them a chance. I put the phone down without replying, not because I do not understand what she is feeling, but because I understand it too well. I know exactly what it means to sit in a place where survival depends on someone else's decision. I know what it feels like to wait for a door to open that might never open. That memory is still inside me, sharp and intact, no matter how much time has passed. The rest of the day moves around me like background noise. Meetings, emails, routine approvals. I complete each task with the same efficiency I always have. But my mind keeps circling back to the same question. Not whether I made the right decision, but what that decision means. Justice is supposed to feel like balance, like something being corrected. But this does not feel balanced. It feels like a continuation of something that never really ended. Late in the evening, when most of the office has emptied out, I open the file again. Not the summary, not the decision page, but the full record. I go through it slowly, not as an auditor this time, but as someone trying to see the whole picture. Their current situation is worse than they admitted. The injuries are severe. The costs will continue to rise. Without coverage, they will not just struggle. They will collapse under it. I lean back and close my eyes for a moment. This is the part no one talks about. The space between what is allowed and what is possible. The system is built on rules, but within those rules, there are small openings. Exceptions that are rarely used, programs designed for cases that do not fit neatly into categories. I know where they are. I know how to access them. Most people in my position ignore them because they require extra work, extra justification, extra risk. I open a different interface, one that most clients never see. Special review programs. Emergency relief pathways. Limited coverage grants. They are not meant to replace full insurance approval, but they can reduce the impact, soften the fall. I start filling out a secondary assessment, using information already in the file, cross-referencing eligibility criteria. It is not fast, and it is not guaranteed, but it is something. As I work, I am aware of the contradiction. I denied them. I upheld the policy. I followed the rules. And now, I am looking for a way to help them within those same rules. Not because they asked, not because they deserve it, but because I need to draw a line somewhere that is not defined by what they did to me. I submit the request under a neutral review category, removing any personal identifiers that could connect me directly to the case. It will go through a separate team, evaluated independently. If approved, it will cover part of the treatment, not all of it, but enough to change the outcome. Enough to give them a chance without erasing the consequences of their actions. When I finish, I sit there for a while, staring at the confirmation screen. Nothing dramatic happens. No music, no sense of closure. Just a quiet acknowledgement that I made a choice that belongs to me, not to them, not to the past. I leave the office later than usual, stepping out into the cool night air. The city moves around me, indifferent as always, lights flickering. People passing by without knowing anything about what just happened inside that building. I walk slowly, letting the distance build between me and that room, that conversation, that version of myself. For years, I thought this moment would define me, that facing them again would either break me or complete me in some way. But now that it is over, I realize it does neither. It simply reveals something that has been there all along. I am not the child they abandoned, and I am not the reflection of their choices either. I do not know what will happen to them. The investigation will proceed. The financial consequences will unfold. The partial support I arranged may, or may not be enough. That is no longer something I control completely. And for the first time, I am not trying to. I take out my phone again and look at the message I never answered. I read it once more, slowly this time, then lock the screen and put it back in my pocket. There is nothing I need to say. Not because I am cold, but because the conversation we needed to have already happened. As I continue walking, one thought settles clearly in my mind, steady and undeniable. I did not save them, and I did not destroy them. I chose something in between. Something that does not erase the past, but does not chain me to it either. And maybe that is the only kind of justice that actually matters. The next morning feels almost identical to every other morning I have lived through in the past few years, and that is what surprises me the most. I wake up, make coffee, check my emails, and prepare for another day of decisions that will quietly shape other people's lives. There is no dramatic shift in the world outside, no sign that anything significant has happened. And yet, something inside me has settled into a place that feels unfamiliar, not lighter, not heavier, just different. The file I closed yesterday is already moving through the system, handled by other hands now, evaluated by other eyes that do not carry my history. For the first time, I am not watching every step of the process. I am letting it move without me. At work, no one notices anything unusual. My colleagues greet me the same way, casual, distracted, focused on their own workload. Cases come in, decisions are made, approvals are granted, denials are issued. The rhythm continues, steady and predictable. I handle each file with the same precision, the same discipline I have trained myself to maintain. But there is a subtle shift in how I see it all. Before, every decision felt like a test, a way to prove that I was no longer the powerless child in that hospital bed. Now it feels less like a battle and more like a responsibility. Not softer, not easier, just clearer. Around midday, I receive a system notification. The secondary review I submitted has been accepted for preliminary processing. It is not a final approval, not even a guarantee. But it means the case will receive additional support consideration. I stare at the message for a moment, letting it sink in. This is the part no one will ever connect to me, the quiet adjustment made within the rules. The small shift that changes an outcome without rewriting the past. It does not erase what they did. It does not undo the damage. It simply creates a different ending than the one that might have happened otherwise. I do not follow up. I do not check for updates every hour. I let it go. That, more than anything, feels like the real change. For years, I believed closure meant confrontation, meant forcing the past to answer for itself. But standing in that room yesterday, hearing their voices break under the weight of recognition, I realized something unexpected. Closure is not about what they say or how they feel. It is about what I choose to carry forward. That evening, as I walk home through the same city streets, I think about the girl I used to be, lying in that hospital bed, listening to voices that decided her future without ever asking what she wanted. I wonder what she would think of me now, sitting on the other side of that decision, holding the kind of power she never had. I like to believe she would not see someone hardened or distant, but someone who learned how to survive without losing everything that made survival meaningful. I stop at a crosswalk, watching the traffic lights shift from red to green, the movement simple and automatic. Life rarely offers clean endings. Most of the time, it gives you something unfinished, something that lingers just beneath the surface. But maybe that is not a flaw. Maybe that is the point. Not every story needs to close perfectly to mean something. I take out my phone one last time, not to read messages, not to revisit anything, but just to check the time. Then I put it away and keep walking. There is nothing left to decide, nothing left to prove. The past happened, the decision was made, and now there is only what comes next. I did not save them, and I did not become them either. I still think about that room sometimes, not because I regret what I did, but because it showed me something I spent years trying to understand. Power does not come from revenge. It comes from choice. The moment you stop reacting to pain and start deciding who you want to be, everything changes. Some people break the cycle. Others become it. And that line is thinner than most of us realize. So now I want to ask you something. If you were in my place, holding someone's fate in your hands, would you choose revenge, justice, or something in between? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story made you feel something real, do not forget to like and subscribe. Because stories like this remind us that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight inside ourselves.